Good morning, folks. Yes, it is morning because the only way I can remember to do these videos is if I do them first thing in the morning. So if you were not able to make the London Summit where all of the amazing ERG leaders and inclusion leads and also some sponsors got together, then this is what the next series of videos is for. I wanted to just jump on and basically share some of the learnings, particularly from some of the amazing case studies that we heard. And the first case study that I'm going to go into today is around women's safety. So a women's safety initiative that was implemented at NatWest that had what I call a 360-degree impact. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So this is ERG Strategy, the channel that gives you tips, tools, techniques to maintain effective, engaged employee resource groups and employee networks. So if that's what you're interested in, you are in the right place. Please do subscribe, share this with your colleagues, etc. This next series in particular, if you want to almost like follow the format that we used at the summit, these would be really good videos for you to share and then unpack and think about how you could apply it in your own organization. That was the purpose of using case studies and really building the whole summit around case studies. So yeah, this is ERG Strategy. New videos every Tuesday most of the time, and also I go live every Friday morning at 8:30 UK time with a guest every Friday. Okay, so let's get into this. Yeah, so if you couldn't make the summit, it was 18th of June in London. There will be more. It was the third summit that we had in London. And the day was very much oriented around these case studies. 3 case studies, and then we would have discussions after the case study. So if you're thinking of maybe changing up format of some of your conferences and events, I would really recommend this. We all know that we learn through stories, and so actually telling the case studies, or rather the case studies by being shared by the organizations where these ERGs had made these incredible things happen, we were able to hear it first of all firsthand from the individuals that were involved. And then as a room, we were able to discuss what had happened in tables and think about how we could take it into our own organisation. So that is quite different for this year, but it's a format I would definitely recommend if you're thinking about how to change things up. So the first initiative, it was shared by NatWest, and it was the NatWest Gender Network. And it was around a women's safety initiative. And it was actually around the very sensitive topic, actually, of domestic abuse and also economic abuse, which is something that we've been hearing a lot more about. And so the Women's Safety Committee, which is part of the NatWest Gender Network, actually took on this initiative to raise awareness and also increase the level of support for colleagues, right? So that's kind of how this thing started. Now, the branch, the bank itself, NatWest, had for some years, I believe, been working with safe spaces and, various organisations around support for women who were victims of domestic violence. But what the Gender Network did is they kind of just looked at the whole thing and realigned everything and really ramped up the levels of support, in particular for colleagues as well. So when I talk about this being like 360-degree impact, I'll explain why. So first of all, some of the things that they implemented, there was a women's safety cafe. So just creating a physical safe space where people could come together with individuals that were trained actually in sort of facilitating these conversations, and also just having conversations amongst peers and other women that were going through a similar thing. So women's safety cafe, so something very practical, a very practical safe space. They also implemented safe lockers, so lockers at places of work where women could store things. For example, if they were in an abusive situation or they needed to keep essential documents, they could store them in these lockers at work. So again, the levels of practical support, and I guess this is the benefit of an employee resource group. We've got individuals that are going through this in terms of their lived experience, and then they are then given the power to actually make change that is going to help them. So it's really getting into practically, what do we need that's going to be helpful, right? So they have these safety cafes, safety lockers, and then also just in terms of support for colleagues, coming into policy as well. And, I always talk about having balance as ERGs, not just events, but looking at things like policy, process, products and service. So when it comes to policy, they actually had a paid safe leave element of policy. So paid safe leave. So if somebody was in the situation where they were having to, for example, flee an abusive situation, or I guess potentially go for appointments and things like that to do with the situation that they were going through, having this safe leave as part of a policy. Now, some people might say, oh, you don't need specific paid leaves because surely, managers will be sensible enough to just grant leave. Well, that works if you're working for a sympathetic and empathetic manager who is even aware of it and is maybe looking out for the signs that you're going through something that's quite difficult. But that's not always the case. And actually, this might be quite a difficult topic for you to even raise with your manager. So having it formalised in a policy is definitely the better route to go. I think generally, and I could do a whole video literally just on paid leave policies and the importance of actually specifying the kinds of things that people need leave for, because when it's left completely up to manager discretion, it gets implemented in a way that's very inconsistent, and it really just depends on the look of who your manager is. So definitely something that ERGs should be looking at. What do colleagues need paid leave for? So there was a policy that was implemented supporting individuals that are potentially fleeing and or going through domestic abuse. And then just in terms of the impact then for customers. So the implementation of safe spaces in a way that was consistent and organised and the most supportive that it should be is something that was implemented. So this is why I call this 360-degree impact, because it didn't only impact colleagues, but it also impacted customers, which is great in terms of, there's a clear business case and rationale that goes beyond just the internal employee resource group, right? So safe spaces within branches, so within the branches of the bank that are open for the wider public. So it really broadens out now the impact and the reach of this initiative. And then when it comes to products and services, now, as far as I know, I don't believe there are any new products. Obviously, this does impact on service because it's the service that's available within the branch. But when it comes to mortgages, one of the things that they did do is they raised awareness, particularly when you think around things like economic abuse or financial abuse, which is basically where there is a partner that's maybe controlling the finances or controlling decisions, or there's some control around the financials and the economics of that particular individual. So what they did around that is they delivered some training to, I guess, individuals that are interacting with members of the public that may be coming to the branch for mortgage, or maybe existing customers that are seeking additional support around mortgages. They rolled out some awareness training for the individuals that would deal with members of the public. So this is why I say this is to me, this is what 360-degree impact looks like in terms of an initiative. And when it comes to getting support from within the business, getting resources, etc., it's much easier to do that when you have got an initiative like this that benefits so many groups. People just look at this and be like, this is a complete no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, right? So that is the first of the case studies that I want to share with you. And I would really encourage you to share these within your employee resource group, share it with your sponsor, with your inclusion leads, etc. Because what we did in the room around these particular case studies is we then had discussions on each table around, how can you take back some of what you've heard and apply it in your organisation. What are the initiatives that you're maybe running that you could potentially broaden out the impact, and how could you do it? And I know that one of the organisations that came along to the summit because this is something they did in previous years. After attending the summit, they would then go back to their organisation and they would prepare a whole presentation for their senior leaders and talk about what they have learned. Bearing in mind their sponsor also comes to the summit, so they'd go back, present to the organisation, you know, this is what we heard at the summit, and this is what we're going to implement in our organisation. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same with these case studies. That's part of the reason that I wanted to share them. I know not everybody can physically get to the summit. There may be budget constraints, even though we do as much as possible to make it, you know, very, very affordable and free in some cases. But, you know, we are looking now at how we share more of what is done online. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that as well. But that is the very first case study. So please take it back to your organisation, share this video, and then maybe have a conversation about it. What is there that you've heard that is potentially transferable to your organisation in terms of initiatives and how you can have that 360-degree impact? That's it for today. Tune in next week for the next case study.